Back in 2017, I worked most of the year to create Planet X2 on the Commodore 64. I did a whole video on this, so if you haven't seen that, I recommend you watch that one. Anyway, at the end of that video, I said I wanted to port the game to another platform, and I speculated what the game might look like on MS-DOS using CGA and later EGA graphics. At the time, I was thinking more along the lines of a straight port, but as time went on, I realized that MS-DOS machines have a lot more RAM, and so I was able to afford a lot of the features that I couldn't fit into the C64 version, so eventually it became a sequel rather than a direct port. Of course, when I did a poll on graphics modes, it seems the vast majority wanted me to support VGA graphics. But being that I wanted to target my game to the low-end MS-DOS machines that essentially never see any new releases these days, I knew I'd need to support some of the early graphics adapters. So, just a refresher on the video modes I have chosen to support and a little bit about my decision here. The first mode I'm supporting is standard 4-color CGA mode. It's 320 by 200 pixels with 4 colors. This mode works on just about every IBM PC compatible machine ever made. The second mode I'm supporting is the seldom used CGA Composite mode. To use this mode, you have to have a CGA card with a composite video output. And you lose a little bit of resolution, so you're down to 160 by 200, but on the bright side, you do get 16 colors. I'm also supporting the Tandy low-res 16-color mode. Now you might be thinking that Tandy graphics could do more than this, and it can. In fact, later modes could go all the way to 640 by 200 at 16 colors, which would probably look fantastic. But I chose to use the low-res mode for a couple of reasons. For one, it's fast. Being that most of the Tandy machines are XT-class machines, they would really struggle to move at the speed I want on the higher resolution modes because essentially I would be doubling or tripling the amount of data transfer to the video card. But there's another benefit of using the low-res mode. It means I can essentially share the same artwork between the CGA Composite and Tandy mode as they're essentially the same resolution and colors. The only difference between them from an artwork perspective is the palette. For example, here's the 16 colors you get with CGA Composite mode, and here are the Tandy colors. So they aren't the same, and it does require some tweaking of the color palette, but the artwork is more or less the same. And of course, I'm planning to support VGA in the standard 320 by 200 mode at 256 colors. But I have not yet written any code to support this. And the main issue is that these three modes here all use the same 16K memory region, and only minor tweaks were required to the code to support these modes. VGA, on the other hand, is an entirely different memory layout, and therefore I'll need to rewrite a large chunk of the display code to support it. I don't really want to maintain two entirely different source codes at this particular stage of the development, so I'm waiting to complete the CGA version first. Okay, so let's take a look at the game as it has progressed so far. I'll start by showing you the 4-color CGA version. And yes, I know the menu isn't lining up with the rest of the screen graphics at this point, but that'll be fixed shortly. The only thing you can do on this menu at this point is select another map and start the game. For the moment, we'll play the first map, River Divide. It starts you off with a single building called your headquarters, and you get 2 builders and 2 tanks. Although what you start with is subject to change and can vary by map. You can use the cursor keys on the keyboard to drive your units around, like this. And you can press return to browse on the map and select another unit, like this. Or even select a building. You can use the plus and minus keys on the keyboard to jump between units. This is especially useful if the unit is off screen somewhere in another part of the map. And you can use the bracket keys to cycle between buildings, although there's only one here at the moment. So let's fix that by building some more buildings. I'll start a factory here, and while it's busy with that, I'll go over here and start a power station. I should point out that at this stage, everything in the game is free, so you can build as much as you want. Obviously, this will not be the case when it gets closer to finished. Over here, I'll build some solar panels, and I'll come down here by this mineral formation and build a smelter. I'll take this tank and go over here and let you see the enemy base. It's really close at the moment just for testing purposes, and I'm getting pulverized. I'll try to take out one of the sentry pods. And there we go. Back down here to the smelter, I wanted to show you how this works. I can pick up one of these crystals. Although the smelter can process any minerals, the crystals are best. The smelter will automatically pick up anything around it and start processing. So there, I took it in. So now I can go grab some other minerals and just start queuing them up around the smelter like this. And here's another rock, and how about another crystal? And let's go watch the smelter, and you'll see that as soon as it's done processing this item, it'll automatically pull in the next one. I also wanted to show you the gas refineries. This is all very similar to Planet X2, but one thing I wanted to point out is that the builder is a lot smarter than before, so if I tell it to build something over here, it will drive itself over to the spot and start building. And that was one of the biggest complaints with Planet X2, that it was hard to tell where things were going to be built. So anyway, there's a gas refinery. I also wanted to show you the alternate CGA palette. Some people prefer one over the other. And I'll go back over to the enemy base and let him kill my tank. I'll take my other tank and drive by at high speed. He still took a shot at me, and there's no way to outrun this thing. It'll always catch up to you. Okay, so I'm going to start it over now, and I'm going to select CGA Composite mode. Now, you'll notice this is a lot more colorful, and the menu is working correctly here. I'm going to select the second map, called the Atoll. And here we go. So one thing I wanted to show you is how the factory works. So I'm going to build a factory up here, and then I'll take my other tank and build another factory over here by the water. Now, there's an interesting difference you'll see, and I'll skip ahead here so that we don't have to wait all day. First, I'll show you this factory in the grass over here. I'll start by telling it to create a builder, and then a tank. And one difference you'll notice from Planet X2 is that the factory will place the finished unit anywhere around the factory that there's room, rather than just having the one driveway. And next, I'll build this heavy tank. The heavy tank is a bit more powerful, although it will cost more to build. It can shoot things, but the best feature is sentry mode. So in this mode, it'll automatically shoot at any enemy targets in range. Now, let's go over to this factory on the water. You may notice that it has a fourth option at the bottom where it can now build a frigate. So I'll tell it to make one. And there we go. Heck, I'll make another one. And now you can see the option is gone because there are no more free water tiles to drop it on. So let's take one for a spin. Of course, you can shoot things on water, but right now there isn't anything to shoot at. However, it can also shoot at things on land as long as they're within range, like this tree. However, if I try to shoot the enemy base, you'll see that's out of range. Okay, so now I want to show you how the power station and radar stations work. So there's the radar, and I'll start the power over here. Let's go over to the radar, and I'll tell it to scan for metallic objects. And you can see our base at the bottom, the two enemy bases on the left and right, and we can even see the little frigate that I left up there by the enemy. We can also do a hydro scan. Now, on this map, most of it's water anyway, so there's quite a lot to see, and you can clearly see the shape of the island. You can also do a thermal scan, which looks for gas vents and lava, and the white dot represents the radar station, so you have a frame of reference. And the oscillating scan looks for crystalline structures, so you know where the minerals are. Again, the white dot represents the radar. Let's go back over to the power station. I finished the station, but we need some solar panels. Now, when this one finishes, I'm going to show you how these work. So if you select the power station, look down at the status screen and it says Connected Panels 0. So I'll build a few more solar panels right here, and I'll fast forward a bit. Okay, so you'll notice that it says Connected Panels 4. The solar panels must be connected to each other, and at some point they have to connect to a power station. Other than that, you're free to arrange them however you want. So fast forwarding a bit more, you can see I have daisy chained a few more, and now it says Connected Panel 6. Now how many panels you will need to build will be up to you and how you want to use your resources. Next, I'll show you the missile silo, and I'll have to tell it to build a missile. And then I'm going to set the coordinates just a few spaces over from the silo so you can see what happens. This game works much as the same as Planet X2 in this regard, and that means you have to first locate your enemy and figure out their coordinates before you can use this. Okay, launch. And there we go. I took out a big portion of my base. And just like the last version, you can also self-destruct your tanks for a similar explosion. Also, if you select your headquarters and look down in the status, you can see it will show you how many units and buildings you currently have. Overall, I am totally thrilled with the way this game looks on CGA Composite. In fact, I'll go so far as to say I'm not sure any other game ever looked this good because there were so few games that actually supported the composite mode directly. And here you go, for example, this Laser XT is a CGA only system, and yet Planet X3 actually looks really beautiful on this machine. Probably the best looking game it's ever played. Of course, like I said, the Tandy version looks almost exactly the same because it shares the same artwork, only with the Tandy machines you don't need a composite monitor because it can display 16 color graphics on the regular RGBI monitor. However, Tandy machines do also have a composite video connector on the back, and they can use a television or composite monitor too. It just isn't as sharp as the RGB monitor. And of course I figure I should mention that yes, the game will work with DOSBox. In fact, I'm using DOSBox as my primary testing method, and with DOSBox you can actually use any of the supported video modes. However, to get CGA Composite mode to work, you need to edit the config file and change the machine type to CGA. If you want to use the Tandy mode, you'll have to change the machine type to Tandy. So yes, you'll be able to play Planet X3 on any modern computer if you want. So the game is pretty far along, but there are still a lot of features left to implement, and some are just minor things, like, for example, I'd like to add the ability to assign number keys to different units so that you can have a hotkey for a unit that you're using a lot. Also, I have not added any sound effects, any music, or any of the AI routines for the enemy at this point. Oh, and I really haven't done any of the VGA graphics code yet either. However, I do have a little teaser image I can show you, which my artist, Renaud, has created. This is just a mock-up done in a paint program, but it does conform to the VGA standard I will be using, and the game should look more or less like this when I get the VGA routines working. There's also going to be a whole introduction story about the game, and most of the artwork for this is done as well, but I haven't written the code yet. Also, there will be other landscapes, just like in Planet X2. In that version, I had a winter landscape and a desert. However, we just haven't made the graphics for those yet. But the biggest task yet to come is dealing with the sound and music. Now, Anders Jensen, of course, is doing a whole soundtrack for this game, just like the last one. And a lot of it will be the same songs you've heard before, and there will be some new songs as well. Now, these will be distributed on cassette tape, which will be in the game of the box. And there'll also be an MP3 version, which will come with the digital download of the game. However, I still have to get the music into the game itself. Essentially, I need to create my own music tracker program that will create Tandy, Ad-Lib, and PC speaker music. And I'm actually looking to outsource that if anybody is interested in taking on the challenge of programming my sound and music routines. And yes, I am planning to actually pay a substantial amount, so I'm not just asking someone to do it for free. So if that's something you're interested in doing, my email address is located on my website, so shoot me an email and we'll chat about that. Okay, now I want to talk about some of the programming challenges I faced. Let's go back to Planet X2 for a moment. One of the reasons that it runs so fast is that the screen drawing routines are really simple. They just draw tiles on the screen, and these tiles are pulled directly from the map. So the screen you see is essentially just one piece of the map, and as you move around it draws that section. And when I say the screen drawing routine is simple, I mean it. I mean, there is no decision-making process there. It does not distinguish between a tree or water or a tank or anything. It's all the same. The way this is accomplished has to do with how the units themselves work. This is where the magic happens. So when this builder is instructed to move to the left, it looks ahead and thinks about what tile's in front of it, and it remembers that there's grass there. So the map actually changed to reflect that the builder has moved, as it is just as much a part of the map as a tree or anything else. But it's still remembering that there was grass underneath, and when it moves again, it places that grass back onto the map. And of course, now it's remembering that there's concrete underneath it. And so this is how the units move around the map. And the screen draw routine just draws the map without any care of what units are or not on the screen. Well, that worked out just fine until I got to the point that I had projectiles, explosions, and other flying units, because now I had a situation where it was possible for more than one object to occupy the same space. So for example, this projectile, now that it has moved on top of this builder, what's it supposed to remember is underneath, a builder or concrete? If the builder stays still the entire time, it can just remember the builder, but if the builder moves while the projectile is above it, it can wind up leaving an extra builder tile on the map. Now, I came up with some convoluted routines to help minimize this issue, and you can see that I managed to get it working more or less stable when dealing with the sentry pods, but I did introduce some code that allowed only one pod to fire at a time. However, I had to disable projectiles for the enemy soldiers as well as the sentry tanks because the amount of firing back and forth drastically increased the chances of having a stray object left on the map. And I ran into similar difficulties with Planet X3 since it is based on the same design concept. But a few months ago, I decided to rework the screen draw routine so that flying objects are no longer part of the map, and they're always drawn onto the screen after the map is drawn, so they work more like sprites. This, of course, solved the problem, and thankfully it doesn't take up too much CPU time. So the ground units work exactly like in Planet X2, but the flying objects are now treated differently. The other issue I'm having is mouse support. Now, I know I promised that it would have mouse support, but I'm having some fundamental issues figuring out how to make it work. Now, it's not so much that I don't know how to read the mouse. That part is easy. I know how to do that. The problem is how to make it actually work with the game. First of all, I designed Planet X2 and X3 to be keyboard controlled. This changes a lot of the user interface, and one issue would be how to drive the units around. I mean, you see, in a game like StarCraft, you just point and click and the unit goes there. Well, I've already essentially added that feature using keyboard controls, as you can see, but you can't tell it to go anywhere that's outside of the viewable screen area. The way games like StarCraft accomplish this is by letting you run the mouse up against the edge of the screen and it will just scroll. And if you're looking at an unexplored area of the game, then you'll just get a black fog of war. Well, there is no fog of war on Planet X3, and I can't think of any way to add one without significantly increasing the memory usage and the complexity of the screen draw routine. So, that being the case, I'm finding mouse support to be a feature that may be best left off. So why am I crowdfunding this game? Well, when I made Planet X2, I had no idea how many copies I would sell. I used my own money and lines of credit to buy enough materials to ship 500 copies. I was afraid to buy any more than that because I was afraid my house would be full of hundreds of unsold copies of the game forever. However, it turns out I didn't order enough. Now you might think, why didn't I just order more? Well, there is a minimum order on a lot of this sort of thing, such as the boxes. That was 500 units, and I didn't feel that I could sell another 500 copies, so I felt it was better just to not have any more boxed copies of the game. Instead, I've been selling the light copy for the last few months, which is basically this. When you order the light copy, you just get a manual with a floppy disk along with the digital download. So lots of people are always asking why I don't order more boxes. Well, that's the reason. Now with crowdfunding, I'll know exactly how many boxes I need to order, and I'll probably try to order maybe 20% more just for those people who missed the Kickstarter, so they'll be able to buy one afterwards. So let me tell you a little bit about the Kickstarter. My goal is to sell around 1,000 pre-orders, and I'm hoping this is a viable number being that I sold all 500 of the boxed copies of Planet X2, along with another 300 of the light copies, for a total of 800 copies. However, I got the distinct impression that MS-DOS might be a larger demographic than the Commodore 64. However, I wanted to give you an idea of some of the different options that are available. Now, obviously, anybody can donate any amount to the Kickstarter, even if it's just $1 to help out the project. But if you pledge $10, then you'll receive a digital download of the game, the manual, and the soundtrack when it's finished. If you pledge $20 or more, you'll receive the digital copy plus a light copy. It will be something pretty similar to what I've been selling for Planet X2. $35 or more will get you a standard box set, which will include the soundtrack cassette as well. $40 will get you an autographed box. $60 will get you an autograph box along with Planet X1 for the VIC-20 and Planet X2 included inside the box as well, and that will actually include everything that was originally inside the Planet X2 box along with all of the new Planet X3 stuff. And then I've set up some special reward levels, so for $300 you get a deluxe box set, but I will also send you a copy of the map editor, and I'll give you any assistance you need to design and name your own map, which will be included in the final game. Obviously the map will have to meet with my approval, and if I reject it for some reason, I'll refund your money. At the moment, I'm leaving up to 5 of these rewards available. Also, you'll get a special credit as a backer on the credit screen and in the manual. And for the Whopper, you can name the ship that carries the colonists. For the moment, it's called the Nebula, but I'm willing to change it to your name or whatever you want to call it within reason. So it can't be anything vulgar or just flat out stupid. So again, I'll have to approve the name, and you'll also be credited as a primary backer in the game and in the manual. In the interest of being open about the Kickstarter, let's talk about where does the money go? Well, around 50% of the money is planned to go towards manufacturing. This will include everything from the box, the printed manuals, the disc labels, audio cassettes, etc. I suspect around 12% of the money collected will go towards shipping, and this number would probably be smaller, but based on Planet X2, I'm guessing a lot of these orders will be international, and it costs over $20 to ship one of these game boxes overseas. The next chunk here is for labor. I'm going to be paying several people for the work they did or will do in this game, including artwork, box design, manual design, music, etc. This labor does not include my own programming time, though. Around 7% of the funds are simply lost to crowdfunding fees, and that's just the nature of the business. And the last bit here is essentially my profit. Now, that's assuming everything else goes to plan. If any of these other areas wind up costing more than anticipated, it'll eat into this section more. So, what is my profit? Well, let's assume the minimum sales number is reached, which is $30,000. 18% of that is $5,400. However, I still have to pay income tax on that, so I'll get more like $4,125, or less if something goes wrong. On the bright side, the more units I sell, the more money I could make. So, some of these items are fixed costs, but the great thing is I can actually get some pretty big discounts on much of the manufacturing if I order twice or 3 times as many of these, which would bring the cost of manufacturing down per unit. Okay, so what are my plans if the Kickstarter is a phenomenal success and it actually ends up selling, a lot more units than I expected? Well, that's good news because that means I might be able to add some other features that I had originally planned to leave off. For example, I'd love to be able to add some more video modes like EGA graphics or maybe some of the higher-end Tandy modes. But also that means I could be able to add more physical goodies. Anders and I have tossed around the idea a lot about including a vinyl record, but we just need a certain number of orders to make sure that that would actually be a viable option because those are not cheap, and you definitely have a minimum of order of around 500 to get those done. The other thing is Easter eggs. I didn't have any room in the Commodore 64 version to put any Easter eggs, but I definitely want to have some Easter eggs in this game. And obviously with more funding, I'll have more time, and hopefully I could fit even more Easter eggs. I have a lot of really interesting ideas for Easter eggs. Okay, so what if the Kickstarter fails to meet its goal? I mean, that's certainly a possibility as well. Well, don't worry. I still plan on finishing the game regardless. I've put way too much work into this already to just not finish it. But I might have to scale back my ambitions some. So, for example, I might actually have to leave VGA mode off or drop sound support for some of the sound cards and stuff that I had planned to support. That may also include losing some of the physical goodies I had planned to include with the game. So, it's still going to happen. It's just a matter of, how fast it's going to happen and what features we're going to get. Also, I could do the Kickstarter again, and maybe I'd have a better idea of what is more reasonable, and I would just, like I said, just drop some of the ambition, put the Kickstarter back out for the amount that I think it would be able to do at that point. So, anyway, who knows? So my goal with Planet X3 is just like it was with Planet X2. I want to bring you a game that will give you more than just a few minutes of entertainment. I'm hoping you'll get hours, days, or maybe even weeks of entertainment as you play through all the different maps on this game. So I'm going to be watching this Kickstarter like a hawk for the next few weeks to see how it performs, how it does. That will give me an idea of what to start planning for. I'm still not sure on some of the rewards. If I'm going to be listening to your feedback quite a lot over the next few days, so I may be adding some new reward levels. Also, I'm still not sure what I'm going to do on the discs. I've already got 3,000 720K discs available. That's the little 3.5-inch discs. But I also wanted to include the game on 5.25-inch disc for those that needed it, because some of the older MS-DOS machines did use that disc format, and I don't have that many discs. I can probably get more. The biggest problem at this point is finding them with blank sleeves, so I may have to get some custom sleeves made for those discs. Other than that, that about wraps it up. So stick around for the next video, and thanks for watching.